Hello, everyone. This is Nicole from Soulflower LLC coming to you with our new podcast called Soul Garden. It is our sacred service to you. Our series is called The Other Sheep, and we are on our third episode. This podcast is uploaded every week on Sundays on YouTube. Um, We're looking into some other places to upload this podcast, but for now it's just on YouTube. We do have presence on Facebook, and we are still in the process of making our presence known on TikTok and Instagram, but that is coming. But for now, we have a podcast on YouTube, and like I said, you can find us on Facebook as well. Just type in Soulflower. Okay, moving on. Let's get on with our disclaimers. Basically, what we're saying is we're not the most formal. If you're looking for that, it's not for you. The beginning of this disclaimer, we're talking about what is not for you. So we're saving the people that has found this podcast and it's not for them time. So if you are looking for something formal, this is not for you. If you think you're somehow beyond anyone associated with any place, experience, or anything presented in this podcast, if you get past this disclaimer, you have a right to feel the way that you do. But my suggestion is for you to go ahead and close on out of this podcast. And peace be with you. This is not a religious or spiritual podcast. So, if you're looking for that, it's not for you. This is a soul consciousness podcast. There are featured subjects on awareness that are informative and for personal growth purposes only. We at Soulflower LLC are not attempting to convert anyone or convince anyone of anything. We're lifelong seekers, students of life, and educators. We are not total experts on this topic. We're only the experts of ourselves. Again, this is a sacred service, so take what resonates, leave the rest. Yep. Okay, so here's who the podcast is for. It's for you to decide who you are in the light of the information that we provide for personal growth and informative purposes. You may be triggered. There are cuss words or profanity within this podcast, in these conversations. We have incorrect words, incorrect grammar. We have adult topics. If that's an issue, you have a right to feel the way you do. You can close on out of this podcast as well. This is not a podcast for children under the age of 18 due to the adult topics that we will be discussing. Parents addressed accordingly because we've done our part. And this one is just merely saying you have a right to disagree. What you don't have a right to do is block the material. Everyone deserves the right to have access to information and then determine who they are based upon that information. Lastly, this is our scam thing. We don't reach out to you for services, so don't get scammed. You gotta come to us. We'll have all our contact information at the end of this podcast. All right, let's get started. This is our Other Sheep series, episode 3. Let's do a quick review of what our concept of other sheep is. Basically, the other sheep is just the person that identifies with being different. Personally, and this is my opinion, I see the other sheep as divine triggers in our society. They are the people that turn heads because they're different. They tend to be weird, or they identify with weird, or people judge them as being weird. But let's move on. I did a long enough pause with that. And that's pretty much all that I'm hearing to say about that. I do want to say that usually other sheep, a trait of someone that's under this concept that we have coined the other sheep. Well, we didn't coin it. It's a concept that we got out of the biblical canon. It's someone that can grow on their path on their own. And maybe people have issues with that. You kind of walk to the beat of a different drum. You think outside of the box. There's a lot of traits because this is a huge group, an emerging group of people. One very telling sign of someone that is within this other sheep concept is that they are very, very in tune with what's going on in the world, in society, and I'm not talking about with current events. I'm talking about they're connected to what's going on energetically. All right, let's talk about our theme for today. Themes for today, they are resistance and projections. These are what I consider, well, they what I consider in my own personal experience. I consider them thorns in my fucking side. Basically, because resistance and projections, they can be a challenge. They can be a challenge. Once you become aware of resistance and projections, you have the opportunity to see how they can be very, very challenging when it comes to achieving a goal. I'll say that. Okay, let's go to the next slide here. All right, so let's define resistance. Let me see what I got written down. I know you have already heard me, my reading voice, and that'll continue throughout this podcast because I write a lot, and my mind runs a lot, so I have to write things down. Okay, so the definition of resistance that I have here, one is manifestations of unwillingness. That's one definition. Another is outcome or delay or challenges that manifest in various ways to prevent a desired outcome or a hindrance. An example, an extreme example of resistance would be, well, how resistance functions is quicksand. The more you try to fight against it, the more you sink into it. So that's the challenging part about resistance, and it really takes it can take a lot. It can, but awareness helps so much because once you become aware of your resistance, then you have the opportunity to change or adjust what is occurring. Um, and it's just based off of how the world operates, based off the concept of quantum physics, where it says you can, as the observer, look at an object and it has no choice but to change. So you can also apply that concept to resistance. Once you become aware of what the resistance is, that loosens up a lot of the resistance at that time. So, otherwise, the more you resist, the more whatever is occurring is going to persist. I'm trying to give another example here, another quick example, because I don't want to spend all day like I did the last episode on this. But it's just things that have to be explained. I'm going to use an example of, say you have a habit of eating. Well, I'll use a personal example. I have diabetes, and my resistance to having diabetes is the fact that I love sugar. I do. I love it. I personally believe, and this is my personal opinion, that most diabetics are merely sugar addicts. We are just people who just went overboard eating sugar. I know in my case, it's also genetic. I don't have it on. We have that particular genetic pattern on both sides of my, in both of my bloodlines. But the resistance for me is the fact that I have diabetes, but I desire very, very strongly to eat donuts, which is one of my favorite treats. Donuts. So it's hard for me. That's the resistance to not eat donuts because I gotta stay alive by not eating fucking sugar. So there's that. I hope that's a clear enough example of what I'm trying to put down here. But that's what's going on with it. Let's move on. Did I? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we have the reason why this is occurring in the middle of the resistance topic is because you need to know that there are certain tools that you have that create your reality based off of a lot of the studies that I have come across and my own in applying these principles. I have found in my experience that thought, word, deed, and intention are all tools of reality creation. Those are all things that I have personally used to create the reality that I am currently in. So, um, and we're gonna get into how we do that, but all of these things have to be in alignment with each other in order to create or have the desired outcome that you want. However, resistance is what causes the misalignments. So once you face the resistance, because most times resistance must be faced, uh, you will come into a better alignment with your desired outcomes when it comes to creating the reality you want. I know that's not the subject here, but the subject's all over the damn place. So you hear, so there's that. Put it in your pocket. Okay. So now we're going to talk about resistance a little bit more. Resistance tend to have a root, and usually the root, because we're all adults, is usually in your childhood. That's just the black ass bottom line there. So yeah, all of the things that you see on the slide here, resistance, the root examples of resistance is programming, which we get from people, places, and things, mentors, parents, the TV, music, uh, books, the media. It's countless examples of programming around us because we need, as human beings, we need repetition in order for something to become a habit, in order for it to become a belief, and then it becomes a lifestyle. So we need programming in order to do that. Now, resistance is challenging, but resistance do help us to grow. We'll get into that later on because we're all over the place. But programming, those are examples of programming. And then we have trauma, which is, we all know what trauma is. Here's a trigger moment right here. And this is why we have triggers. An example of a trauma is a form of abuse, a car accident, anything that causes extreme distress in a moment and it affects you over an extensive period of time. That's trauma. And there are countless examples of that, some of which I just gave you. And negative core beliefs, which a lot of times those are due to what we've experienced in our past. Things like trauma and programming, because that happens too. An example of a negative core belief would be not feeling like you're good enough because when you were little, somebody told you you wasn't good enough at something that you just needed a little bit more practice to do. But you took it personally and took it on as something that you, as an identity, something that you identify with. And it therefore became a negative core belief. Something negative that you believe about yourself. Alright. Uh, a way that resistance works is that it can amplify unwanted emotions, and that can create intense discomfort for us. A good example of that, which is a good example of why I absolutely do not like to exercise, is that exercise causes pain, physical pain, a lot of times, um, and a lot of exercise experts say that that is resistance. You know, that pain, that intense discomfort. Um, that's the reason why I don't like to exercise. So that's a form of resistance for me. Uh, Pain is an unwanted emotion, and it does create and become intense discomfort. So there's that. I hope that made sense. I felt like I was all over the place with that, but hopefully, what something I said helped with that. Just explaining negative core beliefs and how they are and how they work. Okay, so since we're talking about resistance and discomfort, that being a function of resistance, we need to talk about discomfort versus being uncomfortable, because discomfort is a function of resistance, but being uncomfortable is a function of growth, personal growth. And you want to be able to discern and tell the difference between one and the other when you're trying to identify resistance. So, um, discomfort is a psychological unease due to a pattern that you know about or you don't know about. So, um, my example with um, exercise is that's a psychological unease. I don't like the pain to come with exercise. I don't like it. I feel like it's very challenging for me to push through. So that's a very real example in my life right now. Now, and a very real form of resistance. Now, being uncomfortable, that's different. An example of that would be sitting in meditation and you get an itch. That's just being uncomfortable. Well, it's actually a form of resistance. That's not a good example. Well, because it's having in the context of having an unfamiliar, an uncomfortable, an unfamiliar experience, it's uncomfortable. And once you practice, this is something that can happen when you're practicing meditation on a regular basis. So a lot of times you run into the itch, and the itch is a form of resistance because we're not used to sitting still. At the same time, it's also an opportunity for growth because it's putting you in a position of being uncomfortable because it's an unfamiliar experience. Now, I could also say that about the exercise deal, but just bear with me here. So, I guess it's a psychological thing with both of them. Being uncomfortable in meditation, I feel in my personal experience, I can push through, opposed to with exercise, it comes with a psychological unease with me, and so that's just dead on that. You know, I'm working through some shit too, so it's dead on that. Okay, so let's talk about projection. In essence, for me, projections is just that old saying that they have where it says you when you spot it, you get it. That's a form of projection. But let's just read these little boxes because I took all the time to put this joint on there. Projection involves attributing personal feelings, desires, or qualities to another person, group, animal, or object. So that means that you are taking some attribute of you and acting like it's somebody else's shit. That's basically what projection is. People use projection to protect themselves from anxiety and internal discomfort without being fully aware of what drives that behavior. So you can do this and not know it. You can be conscious of this shit, unconscious of this shit. For example, mom bakes some cookies, you eat the last one. So that's just flat out lying. Let's give another example of that. Hmm. Okay, I'm thinking. It's the things that we get offended about. We'll get offended about it, but this is a well, this is a projection. Getting offended about something that somebody tells you that you need to correct in order to be healthy or in order to heal. And you kind of well, that's that particular example is not going any fucking where. So let's come up with something else. I think projection is just taking your shit out on somebody. Let's just leave it at that. When you take out some shit on somebody and it ain't their shit, it's your shit. That's what it is. There's talking about people. That's a projection. Talking about them in a negative or critical manner. Putting people down. That's a projection. Um, I, let's see. Well, that's it. That's all the examples I got for you. So we're gonna move on. Okay, so the root of all forms of health is self-love and self-trust. So the, this is the antidote to projection and resistance. Self-love and self-trust. You work on that, you won't have the issues that we typically have on average with projection, especially unconscious projection. The more aware you become of your projections, the more aware you become of yourself, the more aware you become of your projections, and the more you can, what I call course correct, which is, you know, think or do something different, or feel what you need, face what you need to feel in order to get through that. Which is another antidote to resistance as well, is feeling the feelings and moving forward, which is what I need to do with exercise, but I haven't been doing it. I have been doing it not one little bit. So there's that. Uh, yeah. Usually projection is a form of self-protection, especially if somebody's exposing something about you. So self-love will definitely help with that, because self-love brings self-acceptance. So I just want to throw that out there. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is something else that I've found to be true in my experience with projection and resistance. There's three things that cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. So usually, eventually, you come across some information, we all do, that lets us know what we're resisting and how we're resisting it and what we're projecting. A person, place, or thing usually do let us know the truth of that and the truth of us, because everything outside of us is only a mirror. All right, let's talk about surrender, which is another. antidote of resistance. The ability to let go of the need to control the process or outcome. And I would like to add knowing that clarity will come when it's meant to. Because when you practice surrender, it's usually in uncertain and uncomfortable times. Times of growth. So that's why I wanted to add that. That's what I found to be true when it comes to practicing surrender. Practicing surrender is not easy. It's hard. It's very, very hard. As a person, I was speaking of myself that has control issues. It's hard. So those of you that surrender easily, kudos to you, and please give me some of that juice that you got because I need it. Um, Surrendering is also trusting that whatever we're facing is that's what we need to face in that moment in order to grow, and it because that's the only reason why it's here. So that's another thing that I wrote down about my experience with surrender. Okay, my bad. I forgot I had a slide that said antidote to resistance, but here's some more antidotes. There's a lot of antidotes to resistance: willingness, self-awareness, um, soul growth, the soul growth cultivation tools. You remember those? Some of those were gratitude, detachment, which detachment is merely not taking things personally. That's a practice. It's a challenge. It's a challenge for some of us, but it's doable. And I want to add vulnerability, and consistency. But we're gonna talk about vulnerability later in the podcast. But I wanted to go ahead and just put vulnerability in your mind because it's a very powerful soul growth cultivation tool, and it with in the right circumstances. I'll say that everything must be done with balance. Let's move on. And we're saying here it's not our experiences on our paths that make us, but rather our attitudes that bring us progression, maturity, and growth. So it's actually another good thing to use when practicing reducing your resistance. Excuse me, is being mindful of your attitude, being positive, finding ways to adjust your perception, especially when it's a goal that you're attempting to achieve, you're working to achieve. Resistance will make you give up if you don't learn how to face it. It must be faced. It's not face it till you make it. It's face it until you make it. That is the best thing that you could do with resistance and with projection. If someone's telling you doing some shit and it's a pattern, that means that more than one person has told you this or you've even noticed it within yourself, then course correct. That's a great opportunity. Great opportunity to grow. Okay, we're gonna move on. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation. Please like, share, subscribe to the podcast. It's a little loose, I know, but it's it's real. It's real, and I hope something was said within this that can assist you on your journey. Because life can be hard and things can happen that can break our hearts in ways where it's not easy to piece ourselves back together. I hope that this podcast or something that's said within it sparks a light on the inside of you, because you deserve peace, you deserve love, and you deserve healing. Um, this is a good subject to proceed the next subject, because you need to know about the fact that we all have a tendency to resist things because we're creatures of habit, and we all have the tendency to project because we have a tendency to not like to be in a place of discomfort, or where we don't feel like we know what's going on or how to control it. So the next episode is how we face and work through all of that. We talked about the antidotes, but we're gonna talk about something that involves the soul cultivation tools. They are under an umbrella of something that we call inner work, and we're gonna talk about that the next episode, what that is and the benefits of that, because that's something that like my experience, my walk, my path, I truly, truly believe in my bones that everyone on this planet can benefit from it. And if you master this, there's nothing that you can't do. There's no one who you can't be. There's nowhere that you can't go. There's absolutely nothing you can't do that you don't want to do for you. There's no reality that you can't create for yourself. So we're gonna get into that, and it's just really helped me so much. I really just hope it helps you too. That's it. Let me see if I got the slide. Oh yeah, we do. We're adding an additional thing to this. We do self-mastery reading, so I wanted to give you a one card pull from a deck of cards that I have by Melody Beatty. She is a goat. Look her up. Very good. Very good stuff on codependency. But we're going to do a one card pull for today. And then we're also going to do an energy report. It's like, I'm still going to be at 45 minutes. That's what I'm shooting for, y'all. If you're still with me, thank you. It looks like that's our card. Take a deep breath. This is our advice for today as far as what we can do to master ourselves. Today, I will not wait for someone to come to my aid. I am not helpless, although help may come. I'm my own rescuer. My relationships will dramatically improve when I stop rescuing others and stop expecting others to rescue me. All right. So that's our card for today. Rescuing myself. I think that's a very good follow-up for what we've been talking about as far as projections and stuff like that. And resistance. And our energy report. The only thing that I can think of off the top of my head as far as, and this is just talking about astrological stuff. You can click off if you don't care anything about astrology stuff like that. But the full moon's in Aries, so it's a great opportunity. Aries is about the self. So it's a great opportunity for you to put out crystals if that's what you want to do. You know, if that's what you're into. It's a good day to, and for the, well, it's still, the full moon was day before yesterday, I think. But it's still a good day for you to put out your crystals, and if you want to set out you some water, that you can say a prayer of your water, set it outside, and let the moonlight hit it. Some people do that, but you ain't gotta do that. If you scared, don't do it. You ain't gotta do it. If that ain't for you, that ain't for you. You can just pray and talk to God or whatever you ascribe to, or even journal. Just journal to yourself about your intentions, what you want to do, what you want to let go of. Talk about who you want to be. Think about how you want that to come to pass. Think about how far you come. Write about it. Talk about how proud of yourself you are. Well, that's the end. I hope you enjoyed this. I enjoy doing these. I didn't feel as prepared for this one as I did the first two, but that's okay. It's all good. Here's our circuit services. Again, we do these episodes every Sunday, unless I say otherwise or we post otherwise. We are still working on the technological stuff. We are not in our 20s, so we are trying to figure all this shit out. This is Gen X out here, so we do aspire to have an episode out every Sunday. And again, we are on Facebook, and we are here on YouTube, still posting on there as well. Check us out. If you want any of our services, here they are as well. And please like, share, and subscribe. Good journey to you. And you have a good evening. Take care.